Good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's virtual public information meeting event hosted by the New Mexico Department of Transportation. We're excited to introduce you to this project along US 64 between the Arizona state line and Shiprock. My name is Jennifer Heyer, and I will be facilitating this virtual meeting on behalf of the New Mexico Department of Transportation. For those of you on the phone, if you would like to also watch the online video feed, please go to vekeo.com/NMDOT. Again, that is vekeo.com/NMDOT. If you don't have immediate access to internet, it's okay. Continue to stay on the call line to hear our presentation. Keep in mind, though, that if you are calling in and watching the stream at the same time, you will need to mute the audio on the streaming player to avoid any echo. You may also want to take a second and get a piece of paper and pen to write down some information that I'm going to be offering on how you can participate this evening. We want to welcome our community members who are on the phone as well as our online listeners. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Today, we will be introducing the New Mexico Department of Transportation's US 64 Alignment Study and Preliminary Engineering Project beginning from the Arizona state line ending near Rattlesnake Wash west of Shiprock. More project information, including the informational slides presented online today and contact information for the project team, is available on the NMDOT website at dot.state.nm.us/NMDOT projects. On behalf of the New Mexico Department of Transportation, my name is Jennifer Heyer, and I will be your facilitator throughout this interactive discussion. As we get started, I'd like to quickly describe how you can join the conversation and ask questions of the project team as we move along this evening. For those of you on the phone, at any time you may feel free to press *3. Again, that's *3 on your telephone keypad to ask a question. For those of you participating online, you'll find a chat box underneath our presentation. We will answer your questions at the end of our presentation. If you don't have access to the internet and would like to request a paper copy of tonight's presentation, please feel free to call me after the event at area code 505-878-6577. Again, my number is area code 505-878-6577. Next, I'd like to hand it over to Dana Garcia with the NMDOT to introduce you to our team members and the topics of discussion this evening. Dana?
Thank you, Jennifer. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us. I'm Dana Garcia, Project Development Engineer with the New Mexico Department of Transportation. The NMDOT has partnered with an engineering consulting firm called WSP to conduct this preliminary engineering study on US 64. And I'd like to introduce to you now the team that will be presenting to you this evening. You've already been introduced to Jennifer Heyer. She's our environmental planner with the WSP team. You will hear later from the WSP project manager, Jim Hyman, later in the presentation. Also on the call, we have Paul Brasher, our NMDOT District 5 engineer, Javier Martinez, our NMDOT Assistant District 5 engineer, and also Jennifer Mullins, our NMDOT District 5 environmental specialist, who will all be available to answer questions after our presentation. Our presentation this evening will cover the project background and limits, the purpose and need of the project and any construction projects that result of the study, the NMDOT project development process, the alternatives we are considering, the comparative evaluation and key findings of those alternatives, and the priority implementation plan we'll set in place in the next steps. Finally, we'll end the meeting with a question and answer session to address any submitted comments that you all submit tonight or ask following the presentation. The presentation is expected to last about 30 minutes, so if you do need to step away but you still want to ask a question, you can rejoin us at about 6:30, and that's when we'll start our question and answer portion of the evening. I would like to reiterate that we do want to hear from you, the community, on your concerns with the roadway, the study we're conducting, or any other questions or comments you may have. So as Jennifer mentioned, at any time during the presentation, you can provide input using *3 on your telephone or by typing in the chat box online, and you'll be able to submit a private comment that we will then address at the end of the presentation. So I'll now let Jennifer Heyer take back over to dive into the specifics of the study.
Thank you, Dana. I'd like to just briefly recognize some of the officials that we have on the call today that I'm aware of. I'd like to welcome Representative Anthony Allison. I'd like to also welcome Commissioner Tom Taylor, the District 5 DOT Transportation Commissioner. I'd also like to recognize with the Beck-Labadou chapter, Lenora Robinson, the chapter house manager. And we also have a couple other members from the Beck-Labadou and Shiprock chapter houses on the phone with us today, and we welcome them and thank you for your participation. There may be others that we have missed, and we welcome all of those representatives that are with us this evening and that are here with this important project for us today. With that, I would now like to, I'd like to ask our listeners to participate in a poll that we have. We're very interested in knowing how you heard about our meeting today. If you are on the phone, you can use your keypad to participate in the poll. For those of you online, you'll be able to see the poll below the chat bar on the Vecchio page. For those of you on the phone, to tell us how you heard about the meeting today. If you heard about the meeting today from radio, please press 1 on your keypad. If you heard about the meeting through social media, please press 2. If you heard about the meeting through a card mailer you received, press 3. If you heard about the meeting in the newspaper, press 4. If you heard about the meeting through a direct phone call, then press 4. Press 5 if you received a direct phone call. If you received an email from us notifying you about the meeting, press 6. And if there's another means that you heard about this meeting, go ahead and press 7 now. Great. Thank you so much for sharing. This is very useful information. So next, I'm going to talk about the project limits and explain why we're looking at making these improvements in your community. In 2019, the NMDOT began studying a larger area of the US 64 roadway on the Navajo Nation from Technos Post to Shiprock. There are multiple projects being developed, and tonight we're here to talk about the Highway Improvements Project from the Arizona state line and ending near Rattlesnake Wash on the west edge of Shiprock. We've been looking at the existing conditions and evaluating how we can rehabilitate and improve the highway to meet current design standards and enhance safety. Our review of the corridor has identified aging and outdated conditions with the road and bridges, such as narrow shoulders, pavement in poor condition, low visual distance for vehicles passing, and old bridges. The project will look to add turn lanes at intersections, enhance school bus stops and pull-out areas, and manage traffic speeds throughout Beck-Labadou in particular. For those of you who may have just joined, we want to welcome our participants on the phone as well as online. Thank you for joining us this evening. More project information, including the informational slides presented today online, and contact information for the project team are available at the NMDOT website, which is dot.state.nm.us/NMDOT projects. If you don't have access to internet and would like to request a paper copy of tonight's presentation, please feel free to call me after the event at area code 505-878-6577. Again, that is 505-878-6577. We'd also like to ask our listeners one more poll. That second poll would be if you would like to join our mailing list to receive updates about the project. If you would like to be able to join our mailing list, please press 1 on your keypad and you'll be directed to a screener, or you can request to be added to the mailing list in the chat bar at the bottom of the presentation on the online video stream. And with that, I'd like to take us next to talking about the DOT's project development process. We're here today to introduce you to this project and talk about where we are in the development process. As a reminder, if you are on the phone and wish to ask a question, please feel free to press *3 on your telephone keypad. Those online can use the chat box underneath the presentation. We will answer your questions at the end, which will be in about approximately 20 minutes. Currently, we're in the beginning stages of this approximately 20-mile project along US 64, and there will be numerous opportunities today and in the future to provide input and ask questions. During Phase 1, we are studying the existing conditions and determining why improvements are needed, then assessing which potential options to fix and improve the highway corridor may be feasible to carry through to design and eventual construction. We will continue to advance the study results after this meeting with the goal to arrive at a prioritization of possible options. During the study phase, the NMDOT considers numerous factors into their decision-making, such as environmental resources, traffic, safety, right-of-way needs, construction feasibility, engineering limitations, community concerns, available funding. Next, I'd like to introduce Jim Hyman with WSP, who will speak to you about the details of our proposed improvements being considered.
Thanks, Jennifer. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining the call this evening. My name is Jim, and I will be describing the improvements planned for the US 64 corridor. This is an interactive call, so please use *3 or the chat room to ask any questions or provide comments. There are 3 main types of improvements needed for US 64 involving the roadway, the bridges, and the drainage system. I will start with the roadway. The existing 2-lane highway will be reconstructed pretty much as it is today, except continuous 6-foot shoulders will be added for the entire length. Left turn and right turn lanes are provided at several intersections. Turn lanes will remain where they are already provided. Highways are designed based on vehicle speed. Outside of Baclabado, the design speed will be 60 miles an hour. Within Baclabado, the design speed will be 45 miles an hour. I will discuss improvements in Baclabado in more detail in a few slides. When highway improvement projects are being developed, the do-nothing option is always considered and is referred to as the no-build alternative. For improved conditions, 2 build alternatives are being considered. While the improvements are generally the same for both build alternatives, the difference is in how the improvements will be implemented. Both alternatives consider existing right-of-way, which are usually marked by fence lines along the highway. Build Alternative 1 seeks to minimize right-of-way impacts using more man-made roadside barriers and retaining walls to keep the highway side slopes within the existing fence lines. For Build Alternative 2, the goal is to preserve natural conditions using flatter side slopes which extend outside of the existing fence lines to tie the improvements into land beyond the existing right-of-way fences. As such, the fence lines would need to be moved out as additional right-of-way would be needed, but there would be fewer roadside barriers and walls. There are exhibits available on the NMDOT website that show the proposed improvements for both alternatives on an aerial photo-based map. These exhibits were prepared for each mile of the corridor starting from milepost 0 at the Arizona state line, so there are 21 of them. We wish we could have gone over these with you, but that is not possible under current conditions. The existing right-of-way is 150 feet from the Arizona state line for a little over 11 miles. The right-of-way narrows to 100 feet from there to Shiprock. Additional right-of-way will be needed for shoulder widening and tying in roadside slopes, for drainage culvert extensions and other drainage improvements, for constructing retaining walls, and to replace 2 of the 4 bridges in the project corridor. Left turn and right turn lanes will be provided at 7 intersections, and a 3-lane section where a painted median is added is proposed in Baclabado for approximately 3/4 of a mile. Outside of Baclabado, these include BIA 5038 and BIA 5113 near milepost 6, BIA 571 near milepost 17, BIA 57 near milepost 18, and Road 9140 near milepost 19.5. In Baclabado, vehicle speeds are higher than desired. The 3-lane section is intended to let motorists know they are entering a community setting. Build Alternative 1 has a painted median flush with the pavement. Build Alternative 2 has raised islands in the median at the entry points to the community. This median provides space that could be used for installing entering community signs. Also, the existing radar speed signs will be kept and lighting could be provided at the crosswalk near the gas station. On the west side of Baclabado, realignment of Road 9060 on the south with BIA 5027 on the north is proposed in Alternative 2 to reduce the intersection area and provide better driver expectation. Alternative 1 keeps these intersecting roadways as they are. This concludes the roadway improvements overview, and now I would like to describe the drainage needs. There are over 120 drainage culverts or pipes within the project limits, many of which require extension, rehabilitation, or replacement. For safety where guardrail is not provided, many of the culverts need end treatment so vehicles can drive across the end of the pipe and recover if they have left the highway. Several of the culverts are deep under the roadway, and to improve these culverts, temporary right-of-way impacts are expected to rehabilitate or replace them. NMDOT is evaluating many of these culverts using video to determine if they can be saved or if they need replacing. Now I will describe improvements to the 4 bridges within the project, starting with Shoe Game Wash near the border at Milepost 0. This bridge consists of multiple concrete box culverts which will be fully replaced. The highway will remain in its current position over the culverts but will be widened to provide 6-foot shoulders. This is considered the lowest priority of the 4 bridges. Next is Red Wash Bridge at Milepost 7.6, which has the greatest need for replacement. Multiple alternatives were considered, including keeping the bridge in its existing position, replacing to the south, and replacing to the north. Because of the type of structure this bridge is, it cannot be partially removed to maintain traffic during construction, so a new bridge is needed on the side of the existing bridge. Based on the terrain at this location, it is proposed to widen to the north where the original bridge was located. Additional right-of-way would be required to construct a new bridge. The bridge over Shiprock Wash at Milepost 14 requires full replacement and can be partially removed to maintain 1 lane of traffic during construction. The new bridge will be to the north of the existing bridge, approximately half on a new alignment. An additional right-of-way will be required to construct the new bridge. The Rattlesnake Wash Bridge, just outside of Shiprock at Milepost 20.3, will also be fully reconstructed. The drainage channel under the bridge will allow traffic to be moved to the side during construction, so the bridge will be replaced in its current position. Right now, it is anticipated that the Shiprock Wash and the Rattlesnake Wash bridges would be constructed at the same time. To wrap up the description of proposed improvements, I would like to touch on how traffic will be maintained along US 64 during construction. There are no detour routes, so traffic flow must be maintained along US 64. Traffic will need to be reduced to 1 lane within work zones, which will be limited to 2 miles in length for flagging operations. For bridge reconstruction, instead of people waving flags, temporary traffic signals may be used. Next, I will summarize how the build alternatives were evaluated, what the key considerations are. Several factors were considered to compare the build alternatives, and we still need feedback from this meeting as part of the evaluation. The key differences between Alternative 1 and Alternative 2 are: Alternative 2 is better for context sensitivity in that it uses fewer roadside barriers and retaining walls, which also results in lower initial cost to build it and lower maintenance costs in the long run. Alternative 2 does require quite a bit more right-of-way and has a larger footprint, therefore will disturb more land during construction. Alternative 1 requires less right-of-way and has a smaller footprint, but requires more roadside barriers and retaining walls, which results in higher costs. Alternative 1 would enhance the safety of the existing highway, but not as well as Alternative 2. So at this time, the overall assessment is that preserving the natural environment as much as we can in Build Alternative 2 is the proposed way to improve US 64. NMDOT welcomes your feedback on whether you agree with our assessment or not. The estimated cost to improve the 21 miles of highway is between $60 and $70 million. The next few slides, which are available for view at dot.state.nm.us/NMDOT projects, illustrate typical locations where additional right-of-way will be needed, both on a temporary basis and a permanent basis. The right-of-way assessment is ongoing, and the NMDOT will work closely with the Navajo Nation to determine the best way forward. Examples of where right-of-way is needed on this slide include permanent takes for 2 of the bridge reconstructions and temporary impacts for retaining wall construction. Additional permanent right-of-way is also needed to tie roadside slopes into abutting land and for drainage culverts and other drainage treatments. The map exhibits on the NMDOT website show anticipated right-of-way impacts, which will continue to be refined as the engineering design advances. With that, I would like to turn it back to Jennifer. Thank you for listening and for your comments.
Thank you, Jim. That was very informative. As a reminder for our listeners on the call and also online, we will be having a question and answer session beginning in about 10 minutes. If you have a question on your telephone keypad, please press *3 or enter your question in the chat box online. And with that, we'll keep presenting. As I mentioned earlier, one of the steps in developing an NMDOT-led project involves environmental studies for resources such as cultural resources, sensitive plant and animal species, noxious weeds, and protected waterways. The NMDOT also follows the National Environmental Policy Act, which directs federal agencies to consider how their projects may affect the human and natural environment. Those environmental studies are currently underway as part of the study process, and the project will be designed to minimize environmental impacts as much as possible. Next, I'd like to talk a little bit about the priority plan and the next steps in the project. The project is a long corridor. It's approximately 20 miles. That's for this project. There are other projects beyond the 20 miles that the NMDOT is looking and reviewing that is outside the scope of this particular project that we're talking with you this evening. Because the corridor is long, the NMDOT needs to analyze it and rank priorities in order to determine next steps. And with that prioritization, the NMDOT considers numerous factors to assess those priorities along such a long corridor. Those factors include safety, traffic, right-of-way and environmental sensitive areas, pavement condition, available funding, current and future, and public input. This is done so that the highest ranking projects receive priority for design and construction as funding becomes available. Currently, there is 2 projects that have been prioritized that have funding programmed. The first priority project is replacement of the Red Wash Bridge. Currently, there is $7 million of construction funding programmed for fiscal year 2022 programmed. The second priority project is the replacement of both the Shiprock Wash Bridge and the Rattlesnake Wash Bridge. For the replacement of those 2 bridges, there is $6 million programmed for construction for fiscal year 2023. So for our next steps in that process, we'll be continuing to compile public input this evening and into the future. We will be finalizing the study report and those alternatives being considered. We will develop preliminary design plans along the entire corridor. The DOT will initiate conversations with the Navajo Nation regarding areas that may need right-of-way and determine what is feasible. We will continue our environmental studies, complete those, and prepare an environmental documentation, and then develop final design plans for those highest priority projects. And with that, we'd like to hear from you. And tonight and also beyond tonight. For those on the phone, feel free to press *3 on your telephone keypad to ask a question. Those online, feel free to enter it into the keypad. If you are not ready to provide comments now or ask questions, that's okay. Send me an email, call us. You can go there. You can go to the DOT website. If you want to email me, you can send an email to Jennifer, JENNIFER .HYRE at WSP.com. Again, my email is JENNIFER .HYRE at WSP.com. If you would prefer to call me to provide your comment or ask a question, I can be reached at area code 505-878-6577. Again, that's 505-878-6577. There's also a comment form on the NMDOT projects page. There's also, as we mentioned, there is additional information, and there will also be this presentation that we provided on that website as well. That website is dot.state.nm.us/NMDOT projects. If you do not have access to internet, that is okay. We will be happy to mail you a physical copy of the presentation, and you can request that by calling me at 505-878-6577. And with that, I'd like to transition and pass it over to DOT District 5. We either have Paul Brasher or Javier Martinez available. Javier or Paul?
Good evening. Thank you. This is Paul Brasher. I'm the district engineer for District 5 for New Mexico DOT. As you may know, highways are administered out of 6 districts throughout the state. This happens to be in District 5. District 5 is San Juan County, Rio Arriba County, Taos County, Los Alamos County, Santa Fe County, and Torrance County. And we're at the far northwest corner of our district, as you all know. Thank you all for joining us this evening. We appreciate the opportunity to have to talk to you about this project. It has been it's been needed for a number of years here. It's been competing with projects throughout the state. Actually, we're at the point where we have a document that is analyzing the project and what we should do about making improvements to the highway. As you know, the road runs from Shiprock to the Arizona state line, and within that, we recognize that the road is deteriorated. We recognize some of the bridges are in need of repair. The road needs widening in places. Curves need straightening out and diminishing in terms of their steepness. And so it is. It has, as I say, there were projects throughout the state and throughout this district, but this has risen to the level of priority. And so that any time I have the opportunity to make a presentation to the state legislature, any committee of the state legislature, and I have one coming up, I name it as our top priority for unfunded. We have some partial funding here. We have about $13 million in funding for it, plus about $4 million to improve 64 across the frontage of the school, the Shiprock school that everybody knows about. It's about $17 million. The total need is on the order of $60 million. But as I said, every opportunity I get, I include this as our top priority for underfunded projects. At any rate, it's a good start to getting design going. Now, the study identifies a couple of priorities for us, a couple of first steps in construction, and one is, of course, the first one is red wash, and that is for that we have money for $7 million or so for fiscal year 2022. So the first sign of construction you'll see out there is in 2023 with the red wash bridge, and of course the project will include not just the bridge but the approaches to it.
Lost you.
And,
Are you still there, Paul?
yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Sorry, I didn't go anywhere. I stayed here. I'm in Santa Fe, and I stayed put. You'll see Red Wash will go under construction in 2023. It'll be followed by the Shiprock and Rattlesnake Wash projects, and each one of those will have the approaches to them, reasonable distance on either side, either approach to those bridges. So there'll be improvements there, much needed. Shiprock Wash will probably start in 2024. You'll actually see construction in 2024. You'll see Red Wash start construction in 23. The school I should mention that across the frontage of the school, we'll see construction there probably 2024, and then what we're trying hard for is to find funding for the rest of the project, the rest of the $60 million we need to construct the rest of the project. We're going to need the assistance of the public in bearing with us during construction and their patience until the construction begins. But we're looking forward to the cooperation with the Navajo Nation that we've always enjoyed, as we're going to need some right-of-way as we widen the road, as we flatten some curves, and work on the bridges. They may spill out over the 100-foot right-of-way that we have onto the adjoining land, and so we'll need some entitlements, some easements, and so forth from the nation, which we're looking forward to getting. As has been presented, we're going to have we will finish up the environmental documentation. I know that we've been doing taking care of drainage and environmental, and we have, and at the end of the study that you're seeing right now, we will have a preliminary design. So we will have an idea what the road is going to look like, what the cross-section is going to look like, and you've been presented with an idea of what it's going to look like during construction. But what will come following this study will be our, besides after the bridges and so forth, is then we'll pick the routes that are needed most expeditiously, that have become the highest priority as funding becomes available. It's not likely that we will get $50 million or so, but as we get money, $10 million, $15 million at a time, then we will have decided what the priorities are, where we place that money first. We did apply for a build grant. We were unsuccessful at a $25 million build grant we asked for. But we're always looking for funding sources for our projects. And as I say, this one is our top priority for underfunded projects. And so we are pleased to answer your questions as they come up. I know that there's a lot of interest in exactly when we are going to get under construction. We'll actually see a move, and as I said, the first thing that you're going to see, you will see out there, be about 2023. After the hard design, will be the Red Wash Bridge, which is in dire straits, in desperate need of replacement. And then you'll see Rattlesnake Wash, and you'll see Shiprock Wash. You will see the frontage across the school, and then we will, as our funding becomes available, we will take down these multi-mile segments of the road in the subsequent years. And with that, is there anything we need to add, Jennifer?
Yeah. Actually, we have a couple people on the phone. I'd love to give them an opportunity to share their question. I see some online questions popping up as well, and I'd like to recognize those people and their questions. Right now on the call, we have Rose Saltclaw that has a question. Rose, would you be willing to share your question with the group?
Actually, I think my question has been answered during the talk. So, and I also found a printout of the proposed route on Highway 64. So, my original question was the miles the route mainly, it sounds like it's going to be from Shiprock to the state line of Arizona. So, and that's what the printout showed. So my question has been answered.
Well,
Thank you.
great. I'm glad. Yes, you're welcome. Thank you so much for sharing your question and for calling in this evening. Let's see. Next, we have a question from Shauna Light asking that if the improvements are going through a ranch area and how some of the fences might be handling livestock and with the roadway. Dana, would you like to take that one?
Sure. So the highway is going to remain where it is. Any changes to the fence line, we will replace in, continuous stretches of fence. So there shouldn't be any gaps or anything like that. But I hope that answers your question. We will, any fence we do replace, we'll replace in a solid section. There won't be any gaps in the fence.
Great. Thank you, Dana. Another question that we have, similar to that, which Milford had asked, which I believe we've kind of answered with your response, Dana, is that yes, the fences where they are currently at will be replaced, and that will be within the right of way.
And just to add to that question, we had a question say in the 100-foot width of right of way from the stretch of road between milepost 11.2 and Shiprock, will the fence be replaced? There are spot locations where we think we may need to tie in our roadway embankment slopes beyond that fence line, and that is something we're still going to be working with the Navajo Nation about, whether or not we can get that additional space to do so. And if we have to go beyond that existing fence line, we will be replacing the fence to maintain that continuity and keep livestock, on the other side of the fence.
Thank you, Dana. Milford also asked if there will be any borrow pits related to the road project and asked where those locations would be. At this time, we're so early on in the study process that we know, of course, we will need borrow areas for the construction of these projects, but those locations at this time are not known. That will be as we go into further details. Dana, do you want to add anything to that, or do you think that answered it?
I agree with your answer, Jennifer. Thank you.
Okay, great. John Marsh, we have a question from John asking, will the work performed carry any guarantee from the construction company? Asking about what will occur at that time. And regarding the traveling at the posted speeds during construction, I think we know that construction traffic will be maintained. The posted speed will be reduced during construction. And as far as a guarantee from the construction company, I'm not sure what guarantee you are asking about. Paul, do you have anything you might want to add in regards to that question? Okay. On the phone, we have Nia Hamblin. And Nia, if you would you please share your question with the group?
Well, we have traveled often to Shiprock and across the reservation, and we have been so disappointed at the quality of the highway that was done between Shiprock and Gallup. And I'm wondering if the standards, the specifications are going to be higher so that this highway will be better than the one to Gallup.
Thank you, Nyla.
Nyla.
Yes. Thank you.
This is Paul Brasher, New Mexico DOT here. The one of the things this construction is going to do, this is going to be major reconstruction of the corridor here, and one of the things that the route from you're probably talking about 491 from Shiprock South into Gallup. There are dips in the road where you had some subgrade. The ground beneath the road has settled, and what we're going to do is we'll have the geotechnical report with recommendations as to what the paving and the subgrade preparation need to be to keep that from happening. There is some of that occurring on this 64 from a number of reasons. And some of those things just crop up and show up over time. But every effort will be taken to make this road not do that, not suffer dips, and to make this road last. Because if it takes this long to do it the first time or a second time, we don't have time. We will never have the money to do it again. So everything that is necessary to get the highest quality, longest lasting road here will be done. And we have examples to go by, and like 491, I-25, New Mexico 68. There are roads that were built in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. So we have a lot of examples to learn from, and everything that we can do will be done. You can be sure of that.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for asking.
What I was also the reason why I'm concerned about New Mexico's specifications is because we live within 5 miles of the Colorado border on the La Plata Highway, and our highway is not standing up to the truck traffic that is in Colorado. And I agree with you. If you build it, you need to build it to the highest specifications so that it will not deteriorate, because New Mexico highways deteriorate and Colorado's don't. And they have more problems than New Mexico does, I think, as far as water and freezing and temperature changes and things like that. And New Mexico, our specifications are not high enough to make the quality roads we need.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned this, Paul Brasher. I'm glad you mentioned that because the routes in Colorado aren't all that spectacular, I wouldn't say. Not to slam my colleagues in Colorado, but they have about 3.5 times the budget we do. So they can put money. They can and they don't have the corresponding additional lane miles that we do to take care of. But no, we're getting there's mining traffic coming into New Mexico from Colorado on New Mexico 170. They don't have a rail anywhere in Colorado or Utah nearby, because I checked. They got to go all the way down to Gallup to rail their material. And so over the last couple of years, there's been this great uptake in truck traffic hauling heavy mining material all the way down to Gallup. And that's working on our roads. So we do try to do in pavement design is to design for long life and to design for the repetitive heavy axle loads. So, and these are expensive, and that puts us in the jam that we're in terms of finding money for these projects. But that's a good comment, and there's a good reason for it. Thank you for asking. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. That's helpful. Next, we have another caller on the line. Deborah, would you be willing to share your question with the group?
Hi. I wanted to know, I missed the part where you said the construction would take place. What year?
Yes. Paul, would you like to take that one?
This is Paul Brasher. Let me mention on the construction again, we don't have funding for the entire quarter, the probably $60 million we need, but we do have several $1 million that we're going to apply to. The first thing that you'll see, the first construction that you'll see out there will be replacement of the Red Wash Bridge. We have $7 million to do that, and that money is in fiscal year 2022. But the way that works is the money comes available by the time it's available, and the project will be designed by then and ready to go, except that will probably be into winter, so the actual construction probably won't start till we get some decent weather in early 2023. So you'll see Red Wash Bridge construction starting probably early 2023. That will be followed the next year by Rattlesnake Wash and the Shiprock Wash. We have funding. We do have funding for that, and that's in fiscal year 23. So you would see construction probably starting in either very late 23 or early 2024. That's what you'll see next. Okay, so that's when they start. The construction starts after the funding is available, close after, and our plan is to have it all designed and ready to go, so that as if we get some good news, we get some surprise money, some windfall or some extra money somewhere, then we will then we're ready to go. We'll launch in on the next phase of the project.
Okay.
So that's what you'll see.
Okay. The other question I have is it always just going to be 2-lane road, just like it is? Or I know Baklavato, you said it was going to be like a 3-lane, and the miles per hour is going to, or the speed will be reduced. Is it just going to stay just as it is, like 2-lane road?
Ma'am, this is Paul Brasher, New Mexico DOT. We'll have the same lanes, except that we will have shoulders and
okay.
And turn lanes where it's appropriate, and the alignment will be adjusted where it's needed for sight distance, so that you don't have to see over a hill or around a curve.
Oh, okay.
So that's what it's going to look like.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Indeed.
We have another question from one of our online listeners regarding the Shiprock Wash Bridge, about the rebuild of it and how we will plan to reroute traffic during construction. Jim, would you be able to answer that?
Sure. The Shiprock Wash Bridge is a type of bridge that we can partially remove. So we can remove half of it and keep one-way traffic going across that bridge while the new bridge is being built to the north. So there won't be any long detours or anything or rerouting of traffic. They'll stay right in the corridor. And then we might use temporary signals to keep the construction zone less than 2 miles, but it for sure won't be any more than 2 miles. So traffic will just stay right in the US 64 corridor.
Okay. Thank you, Jim. Another online question that we have is from Representative Allison. I sit on the House Appropriation Finance Committee, and at the last session, we allocated an extra $25 million. What happened to that money?
If this is Paul Brasher, New Mexico DOT. If the $25 million, I don't know if the $25 million was earmarked, because what we have done is we have found a place for all the money we got from the legislature in various appropriations here. I'm not familiar with a specific $25 million appropriation that went directly to highways in the amount of $25 million. We have seen varying amounts. I would be glad, however, to research this, look this up, and report back to Representative Allison And I appreciate his question and his being able to participate in this meeting today. But I will research his question here because I don't know of a $25 million earmarked for a highway, but I would like to know. And so I'd like to thank the representative for joining us and asking the question.
Thank you, Paul. Another question he had was the stretch of road between Shiprock and the Arizona state line has 77 very significant dips that have caused accidents. The repair is very long overdue. And he also asked if there are dates that can be mentioned in black and white to share with his constituents. We've mentioned some dates of 2023, 2024. Paul, could you provide some clarification?
Yes, this is Paul Brasher again. Yeah, I would be glad to put that in writing, what we've discussed about today, and I'd be happy to send it to the representative or anybody would like it. But he is right. I've talked to the representative. I've had the good fortune of meeting with him a time or two and talking with him about this stretch of road, and I know that he's very, very concerned about the condition of it, the safety, and I know that he's very anxious, as are the traveling public, to get this road replaced. It's got at least 77 dips. It's got potholes. It's got problems with bridge railing and fencing. And we do our until this happens, until this construction begins, and this can be alleviated. We have maintenance. We have a maintenance patrol in Shiprock, as a matter of fact, that makes this a priority, this reach of 64. Patching the potholes, potholes or blade patching, which is large reaches of pavement repair. They try to stay on top of the guardrail best they can, and the fences the best they can. So our maintenance is on top of it as best possible here until we get the money to replace the road. But we are aware of the seriously deteriorated condition of this highway, and it is our priority for underfunded projects for the district.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer.
You're welcome. As a reminder to our phone listeners and our online listeners, this presentation, as well as additional information, is available on the DOT project's website, and that is found at dot.state.nm.us/NMDOT projects. If you do not have access to internet, we can provide you with a hard copy of our presentation this evening, and you can receive that by calling me, Jennifer, at area code 505-878-6577. We have another question from one of our online listeners that is asking if the Navajo Nation is the only entity NMDOT needs to contact for additional right-of-way, specifically about the chapter areas that the highway travels through. Dana, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, I'll speak to that. So we are working collaboratively with the chapter houses, but ultimately I do believe that the final approval does come from the Navajo Nation.
Thank you, Dana. Another question that we have regarding right-of-way from one of our online participants is also, since there will be some land lost on both sides of the roadway through right-of-way acquisition, how will those community members be compensated?
This is Dana Garcia again. So our typical right-of-way process, we identify any parcels or landowners being affected, and we will reach out to those individuals individually to discuss with them what we're doing, what the plan is, why it's unavoidable, if it is unavoidable, and we'll go over those details with the landowner. And the process has numerous steps. So once we fine-tune where those locations are, because as was presented today, we have kind of two alternatives, one which minimizes those right-of-way needs, but at the cost of putting in large engineering structures like retaining walls that may not be, visibly very pleasing, and they need to be maintained, and they're very expensive. So it's a trade-off, and the landowners will be contacted individually, and compensation I can't speak to specifically right now, but I hope that answers your question. I mean, we will work with you and let you know when we get to that point in the design process.
Thank you, Dana. And also to add to that, as part of the right-of-way process and coordinating with the landowners, obviously another agency that the DOT will be coordinating with is the Bureau of Indian Affairs, as well as was mentioned, the individual chapter houses, the individual property owners, and the Navajo Nation as a whole. Another question that we have from one of our online listeners is, are there bus turnouts that will be included as part of the project, and will there be any safety corridors to slow down vehicles? Jim, would you be able to speak to that?
Sure. Yes, the bus stops will be improved, the bus turnouts, and I think we have some locations, but we're certainly hopeful that, if there are bus stops where you want them, we'd like to have you point them out for us, and we'll make sure they get into the design. As far as the safety corridor goes, I think I might want to have Javier answer that one, because I'm not sure if the DOT is still designating safety corridors or.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Javier, would you be able to speak to that?
Yes. This specific segment will not be a safety corridor for that. There was back in, it's been about 10 years when they first implemented the one between Shiprock and Farmington that goes, I think, all the way to Bloomfield as a safety corridor there. But as of this time, no, we are not anticipating this segment being a safety corridor.
Thank you, Javier. Another question that we have from one of our online listeners is funding available for this project, and is it all coming from the state? Paul, would you be able to speak to that?
A large portion of this is Paul Brasher. A large portion of the project will be state funding, and the balance of it will likely be federal funding, unless we are successful, say, in applying for a grant under the Federal Highways discretionary grant program here. If we can find funding besides our partners at Federal Highways and other state money, it would have to be money from the outside like that comes in, or some special appropriation from the legislature. We would certainly welcome, but that's where the money will come from.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Another question we have is specifically from Unttitled Chapter House. The Chapter House is asking how they might be able to help with the project. Dana, would you like to speak to that?
Sure, thanks. I think right now the biggest way the chapter houses can assist us in this project is by speaking with their members about, that the project even exists. We can provide you with this presentation. You can have materials to distribute. That would be great. The bus stops is one big thing that we would like your feedback on. I think that we have all of them, but you guys are the ones who live out there in the area. If we're missing something, we may not even know it. So I think that's probably the biggest way the chapter houses can help. And then just general feedback. We do want to give you guys a project, or at least know what it is that you want, so we can consider it. At least consider it for a future project. So talk to us.
That is great. That's a great response. Yes, this is why we're doing this, because we want to hear from the community members, we want to hear from the chapter houses, we want to continue these conversations going into into the future, so that way we can be developing the best projects possible for the community. A question that we had in advance of our event this evening from one of our community members was, will the DOT give preference to Native-owned businesses when selecting a construction contractor? Javier or Paul, would you like to be able to answer that question?
Under our construction process here, we typically we advertise the projects once they're designed, and we take bids on them. And there aren't preferences given. Qualified contractors have a pre-qualification status with New Mexico DOT, but there isn't a preference given to any particular contract or category of contractors, as long as they have the required licenses, contractor licenses to do business in New Mexico for us. We expect to get any number of qualified bidders, which will hopefully keep the costs in line, to keep it in line with something that we can afford when it goes on. Thank you, Jennifer.
You're welcome. Thank you, Paul. We have another question from Representative Allison. Can the study look at making this stretch of road into a 4-lane? That way the 4-lane could go from Bernalillo to the Arizona line. It is currently a 4-lane all the way to Shiprock. Dana, could you answer that question?
I cannot. I'm going to have to defer that question to Paul.
This is Paul Brasher. In terms of 4-laning the road, making it wider still here, I'm not sure that we would have the traffic counts for that right now, and it would be probably 2.5 times the funding that it is right now to do that, and significant right-of-way takes. Now, in maybe a future study, in future years, once this project has been constructed and we have some data on how it's performing, and in terms of let's say crash history, safety, and traffic counts, then maybe it could be looked at again. But it's not. Traffic counts not right now would not support 4-laning, making four lanes, 2 lanes each direction out of it. It's something that could always be considered in the future, but it'll be a ways out. It won't be till this project is built, I don't think. That's a good question, though. I appreciate it. Thank you, Jennifer.
You're welcome. Thank you, Paul. A comment that we have regarding turnout lanes, that there's the helipad and the cemetery in Beclabido that need turnout lanes with a cattle guard. Is that currently in the design for the study where we're at right now? I'm not so sure that has gotten into the conceptual designs this early on in the process, but that is something that we will definitely look at and follow up with you about. We also then have a comment about the US 64 for 6 miles running through the Salago Altos Range, and the president of the association to contact that person. We will be in contact with that person. Thank you. And with that, I think that we can wrap up. I don't see that we have many more questions coming in. So With that, we wish we could have been with you in person today. We had initially prepared back in March for our in-person meetings at the Beclabido and Shiprock chapter houses when the stay-at-home orders went into effect, and we needed to change our platform in order to allow for a safe way for the community to be involved and provide input to help us advance this project. And we are so glad that you have been able to participate this evening. And please keep in mind that this will not be the last opportunity to provide input on this project. We will be coming back in the future. As a reminder, if you have any questions or additional comments, call us at 505-878-6577, or feel free to send me an email at jennifer.hire@wsp.com. Thank you so much for your participation, and have a good evening.